lots of things going. We have a guest coming on in a minute. We're trying to listen to the Bossier Parish School Board meeting live. What else have we got going on tonight?
All right. Well, you didn't say. Are we live?
Oh, yeah, I usually say that every time. Look, we're
I thought
actually live. I hope it works tonight.
I thought you were just reading the prompt and the notes so you would be prepared.
No, me prepared, I ad lib most of the time.
You got to tell me. What if I was saying something bad about my lovely wife? I'd be in the doghouse for the next year. What kind of partner are you?
You're in the doghouse most of the time anyway. It wouldn't be much different.
That's besides the fact. Look, we're like Cheech and Chong here. You're supposed to give me some heads up.
And of course, we're already getting notified in the comments that we are late. Yes, folks, we are about, 5 or 6 minutes late. But again, we've been trying to listen to this school board meeting here, and we'll talk about some more of that. Duke, before we go to our countdown, what else do we have on tap tonight?
Well, a lot of people didn't know it, but I'll tell you what, that Caddo Commission stuff over there in Caddo Parish, it is the gift that keeps on giving. I'm talking about you got some folks giving up some comments and some meetings over there that is just off the chain. Folks are going to love to hear what some of the folks over there are saying. Hey, they even talked about Bossier over there.
Yeah, well, even on the Louisiana side, Louisiana Watch side, of course. Well, that includes Bossier, so we got to talk about Bossier a little bit tonight too. All right, of course we'll introduce our guests and tee that up here in a little bit. But we do have a guest tonight.
But most importantly, there's some things happening on the COVID-19, mass formation psychosis of society today, and we're going to talk about that tonight. And I think our guest has a little bit to say about that.
Based on reading a few of the documents that she sent over, I bet she's got just one or two things to say about it. It's COVID. It's like, Marsha Brady from the deal. COVID. So I don't know. Maybe eventually we'll get over all this.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe common sense will rule the day once again. And, we're holding out hopes that the Bossier Parish School Board here is going to give us some entertainment here that might have an effect across the state.
Yeah, we'll talk some more about that. All right, so we're about 2 minutes in. We got about 30 people watching overall so far. Folks, for those of you that have been following us, you kind of know the drill. We got about a 2 to 3 minute little countdown, little video that we run. That allows folks to continue to get notifications. Tag your friends. Share this out in any Facebook groups you may be on. Of course, we're streaming to 2 YouTube channels. Just search for Louisiana Watch or Bossier Watch, one word. You can find us there. Anyway, go grab some popcorn, grab a stiff drink, whatever you need. We are going to be back here in about 3 minutes or so, give or take just a little bit. podcast is brought to you by Eagle Truck Center, soaring to new heights. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out for Bossier. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go.
There's no counter on that video.
No, I made it a surprise when we go back to live, and we have made it successfully through another one. Folks, hey, y'all let us know if the audio sounds okay in the comments or whatever. And let's get started.
Yeah. Hello, Toby. Hello, Tim Mueller. Hello, Don Thomas. Hello, Roger Thornhill. Thanks for the comment on the hat there, Roger.
All right, so we're glad to have everybody. I think we got about 30 some odd, 34, 35 people watching. So y'all make sure, tag friends, share it out, text some friends, say, hey, y'all go check out Bossier Watch or Louisiana Watch, whichever page you want to do. We're streaming to both of them on Facebook and both of them on YouTube. All right, so with all that said, what's first up on the agenda?
Everybody's wondering what's going on. Well, like I said in the start, the Bossier School Board, they're looking to get their some of their taxes renewed, not new taxes, but renewals. And, I think they kind of rubber stamped that a while ago and they didn't got through that. But boy, they are hot on something right now. Somebody had the gall to put on their agenda that they wanted to review their COVID requirements of how they do business in Bossier. Yeah.
So somebody on the school board is actually stirring the pot?
I got to tell you, here's the interesting thing. So tonight they had a new president of the school board. They routinely, a lot of people don't realize a lot of these boards, they routinely switch who the president is. And tonight was one of those nights. In fact, Adam Bass was made the president of the school board tonight.
Oh, that's an interesting turn of events. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But here's the thing about Adam Bass, and I'm not ready to hoist the flag that he's the hero yet. I'm not ready to do that. I wish he would have done something, before today, but I'm thankful he's doing something today. And one of his cohorts, Dennis Bamberg, is there with him, I think, so far from what I've heard. But he's pushing the envelope on, the mandates for the Bossier Parish school system. In essence, wanting to make the policy of the Bossier Parish school system that if you're sick, you stay home. If you're well, you come to work.
Well, imagine that.
You come to school. Bottom line.
It's fairly simple and the way it used to be before we all went nuts over COVID.
You talking about that mass psychosis formation thing?
Yeah, and wearing the 5 mask and double stacking mask, but pull it down under your nose. Anyway, I'll get off on my soapbox here.
I'm getting to where I can say that without twisting my words up.
Yeah, careful. We'll have the black helicopters showing up. So
now I am hearing the school board loud and live in the background. They must have got your message to turn the volume up.
Yeah, I'm trying to see where that's coming from because obviously it's coming from my machine. Oh, here we go. It's coming from my phone. So let me turn them down so we got a little better audio here. Okay, back to the drawing board.
Okay, so as well as the Bossier Parish School Board, which that's going right now, and we're expecting some fireworks there, and it's as we speak, that's happening. They're going at it. I'm sure, as you know, in a previous show, we covered the lawyer for the Bossier Parish School Board, who is also a lawyer. I think his last name is Geis. And we covered how, we thought he had a little bit of conflicts of interest because of his and his law firm's donations to none other than the governor of Louisiana.
What?
So,
no way.
Yeah, and we just kind of felt like maybe he was steering things a little bit. that was kind of our idea. That was a show quite a while ago. I'm sure he's got some word to say, but rumor on the street has it that the attorney general has weighed in, and there's possibly a letter going to be presented right here at this meeting that may change the course of things. Don't know.
Yeah, and we were hoping, just so everybody knows, that's why we've been listening to the school board meeting. We were hoping that they would get through this part before the show, and then, we could kind of bring some excerpts of it in and kind of discuss it and all that. But they're still discussing this, so we're just going to continue on. We've got some folks watching and keeping us up to date on what's kind of being discussed and all that, and so we'll kind of feed everybody information as we go.
That's right. So the Caddo Commission, boy, they were going at it, and I don't know whether to say they had some anti-American rhetoric going on over there or what have you.
Anti-American rhetoric.
I mean, look, there was a guy who actually said this, Rex. He said, "You can't say you don't want regulation."
What?
He said you can't say you don't want regulation.
Really? Okay.
Thank goodness he wasn't at the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah, no kidding. So I'm going to assume this had to do with the whole
with the MPC
Cattle
and
Alliance
the
for
zoning
Freedom,
and
MPC zoning deal, and getting the nasty grams for having a boat parked in your driveway. I mean, if that was the case, I'd get one every day if they had that crap over here in Bossier.
yeah.
All right, so do we want to play any of that video from that, or?
I think what we'll do is we'll come to that after, but we have a guest waiting in the wings.
Right.
And I hate to be rude, but we have not just any guest. We've got the guest.
The with a capital The, huh?
A capital The. Yeah, we've got the guest. In fact, it's a crazy thing about this guest. You know how in life sometimes you know somebody, but you don't know somebody. Well, somehow or another, I've went through life here and I've known this person and I didn't know I knew this person.
Really?
And
this is interesting.
This is actually somebody, and she's a home run hitter. And the weird thing about it is I've heard her name and I never put it together. It's crazy. It's crazy how life works.
Is that a Houghton thing, or what is that?
No, it's not a Houghton thing at all.
You usually blame it on being a Houghton thing. I was just saying.
No, Houghton's got no credit in this one here. But let's bring our guest in.
All right. Well, let me
delay anymore.
Let me click the magical button here. And hi there, Jill. You should be live now.
Hello. Thanks, guys, for having me on. I've watched your show before, and I've thought, I wish they would ask me to be on. How can I get on their show? So thank you so much for inviting me on.
It's usually the complete opposite of that. People watch the show and go, I hope those guys never want me to be on the show.
We like to coin ourselves as being infamous.
Yeah, it's like from the Three Amigos and El Guapo. Infamous. That's more than famous.
Absolutely. Well, I'm infamous too in certain circles. So it's nice to be amongst you guys.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about you is you're one of those people that you are down there in the trenches. And, I don't know that you've always been kind of out front, in media and all that kind of thing, but you are one of those people that's down there in the trenches.
Yeah.
And, interestingly, today when we talked, it came to my attention that, not only did I know of you, but I also knew your family. I mean, I've known your dad, since the 80s, and I didn't even put it together as to who you were and to who he was.
Now, how do you know my dad? I didn't even think to ask you about that this afternoon.
Well, it's from a long time ago. When I graduated high school, I got a job, and he was actually part-timing from his real job there, and we got to work together.
Oh, good.
I liked him then, way back then. That was like back in the early 80s. And, we have maintained being friends ever since then, up until recently. But, I saw your name, and my wife made a comment, and then I was able to put it together.
Right, because your wife and I went to school together for a short while.
And she informed me of that. How small is that world?
I
And
know.
ironically, she is at that meeting right now. So if we see something go flying across the screen or something or another, we'll know who it was.
I don't doubt. I know she's there. That's awesome.
A wild banshee cat running up there to the podium to grab the mic. We'll know who that is. So
Right.
Now, Jill, tell us what you've been doing and tell the people watching what you've been doing. And for everybody watching, I promise you, we're fixing to get into some good stuff. So you want to, put your seatbelt on. Go ahead, Jill.
Gosh, it's well, our work in the area of health freedom actually started pre-COVID. As I was telling you earlier, my co-directors and I of Health Freedom Louisiana, we actually incorporated Health Freedom Louisiana in the summer of 2019. And then about 6 to 7 months later, we literally hit the ground running with COVID. Actually, we didn't really hit the ground running. We kind of sat on our sofas with everybody else and surfed the internet. But I remember reading my first Lancet article on COVID and the protocols that they were using in China on February 5th of 2020. And I thought, you know what, this is not good. This is going to be ugly. And we knew from our work prior to COVID that the pharmaceutical industry had a grip on Congress and local governments. And that was one of the reasons that we were so proactive in 2019 was to make sure that individuals kept, retained, and were informed of their rights and their freedoms in regards to what the government has the ability to do to their bodies. What is an individual's right when it comes to bodily autonomy? So, and there was a trend prior to COVID. There was a trend that was moving across the country. California was California had removed religious exemptions for vaccination requirements for school attendance. New York removed religious exemptions. Massachusetts was fighting for it. Connecticut just lost their religious exemptions for vaccinations for school requirements. Mississippi, has not had religious exemptions for years. West Virginia, Maine lost their religious exemption. So we went to work trying to make our legislators aware of the importance of a religious exemption for vaccine requirements. So can you guys hear me okay? There's a little bit of background.
Yeah, we got a little bit of background noise going on, and it was going great. I'm not really sure what's causing that. Let me see if I can isolate it to you. Hold on just a second, Jill. All right. I've got Jill muted, so I don't think it's her. Let me mute Duke. Hold on, Duke. Up. Duke's the culprit.
Well, what am I doing?
Yeah, hold on just a second there, Jill. Technical difficulties.
I have no idea.
Not a problem.
All right, that's much cleaner.
I would point out real quick at the Bossier Parish School Board. I clicked over there and I was watching that, and interestingly, they have Ian Snellgrove from Bossier with the Office of Homeland Security, and I'm being told that he's actually saying, "Oh, he's carrying the water for, I'm assuming, the governor's office. Oh, we should maintain the status quo." Isn't that interesting that the Office of Homeland Security is going to weigh in to try to carry the governor's water? And I'm being told as well that supposedly there's somebody from the Bossier Parish Police Jury is showing up. I'm thinking that for some reason folks have found that there may be a threat here.
Children.
Isn't that interesting?
Never a dull moment.
All right, I'm sorry, Jill, to kind of get off that, but I think that's important. And the superintendent has taken the position to request that no changes, be made to the Bossier Parish school system policy.
All right, so I'm putting up a couple of comments real quick. So Kaylee Larkin says, "Why the hell is Homeland Security at a school board meeting?" Well, Kaylee, because once you create the behemoth of Homeland Security, they're everywhere. You can't get rid of them. And I don't know, maybe the FBI is there as well. Who knows these days?
Don't know on the jury member, Dawn Thomas. That was a message that we got from somebody that was there. I haven't seen a police jury member that I um, recognize. I haven't seen one come to the podium. I'm not listening to it. I'm seeing it, and then people are texting me at the same time. But anyway, so Jill,
Yes.
with that said, you
Hmm.
know, a little bit of you guys have been proactive for a while, and like I said, you've been in the trenches,
Yes.
and y'all have shot off paperwork. You've done studies. You've done all this information. I mean, and you've been contending. I mean, you stepped to the
Yeah.
plate and you're fighting. And you sent us one letter, Rex Cut One.
All right,
You
yeah,
sent
let me get
us
over there
one
to
letter
it.
that was a letter to the Department of Health. And tell us a little bit about that. Now, we've watched some of the committee meetings where Cantor was up there bouncing around, and we highlighted some of the legislators
Mm.
that, you know, uh, specifically one jumps out at me, and I hate giving Representative Raymond Cruz, kudos, but he deserved one on this one when he asked if they were supporting Krispy Kreme, or what was it, Rex?
Yeah, well, it was the health deal.
Or were
Let's
they
see, what was it?
monitoring Krispy Kreme and intake?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, they had done a deal with like McDonald's and Krispy Kreme or something like that, and then they wanted to talk about health. And look, folks, I have nothing against Krispy Kreme. I love Krispy Kreme, and by the way, I love McDonald's too. By the way, but anyway, the point, well, the point that he made was actually pretty good.
It
so,
was really good. The point.
yeah,
Because because one of
but
the
y'all sent this technical letter though. Y'all sent
oh,
this technical letter, and you were on point on stuff. And I want you to talk about that a little bit.
oh, well, absolutely, because one of our issues with the Louisiana Department of Health um, is, of course, that they're not exactly honest with the people that they that
Wait,
they
what?
serve. Yeah, and
Government being honest?
and it's kind of like the Department of Homeland Security. It's an unelected, agency. These are state employees, and they're basically they have, as I mentioned in my testimony on December 6th, which was right after I wrote this letter, requesting the resignation of Secretary of Health Phillips and Cantor, was that they have done more. This unelected state agency, these state employees have done more to influence um, government policy in the last 2 years than our state legislature. And that's wrong. I mean, the balance of the three branches are completely out of whack at this moment. And one of our complaints was that they have literally taken over the narrative. For example, when you were talking earlier about being infamous, I've been in the press several times, but it's not been a very flattering image of me that they portray, because I share the truth on this issue so much, and it's so I guess just kind of dangerous to their narrative. But one of the things that has really irked me is the fact that the Department of Health is promoting what is still considered an experimental drug, and they refuse to acknowledge that these drugs are still experimental. Even the one that supposedly has FDA approval, which is not available in the United States, even that one is still experimental for the age groups that it's not FDA approved for, so with 15 and under. So we wrote this letter to the Department of Health, um, basically explaining how a drug under EUA is still considered investigational or experimental. And really, when they deny individuals, when they deny consumers that information, they're denying informed consent. And they're also not just informed consent, but they're actually leaving out some really pertinent information when it comes to consumer rights and patient rights, and the fact that you can't sue. If anybody is injured by the use of these drugs, you cannot sue the manufacturer or the administering physician. You cannot sue the government for their misinformation. All of this is protected under the PrEP Act. So the government is actually considered a provider, if you will, or a planner. I think that's the correct technical term. They're considered a planner under the PrEP Act. So all of the information that's coming from the governor during his press conferences, from the Louisiana Department of Health in regards to these products, they're covered. They can't be sued for supplying misinformation. But supposedly I share misinformation, and that's the way they portrayed me in articles, especially from the Advocate and NOLA.com and stuff. So it's extremely aggravating. So our purpose in this one particular letter was to point out their misrepresentation of these drugs, and that the consumer, the citizens of Louisiana, should know that they are still experimental. And you guys know the Nuremberg Code covers specifically experimental drugs, and the fact that a consumer or patient needs to be made aware and have voluntary informed consent. So the idea that they're withholding education, LSU, they were, and all colleges and universities across the state were withholding, Greek life, sports activities, band, and all these. They couldn't even get into a classroom without showing their Vax Pass, on their phone. All of that defies the Nuremberg Code, which is, granted, it's not in statute, but it's embodied in our Constitution and our state's Constitution under Article 1, Section 5, which is the right to privacy, and the fact that we should be free and free and secure in our person. And at this point, we're not. When they're denying people education, oh my gosh, New Orleans is the absolute worst at the moment. You can't even take your 5-year-old in a store or restaurant in New Orleans without showing their vaccine passport. That is a human rights violation. And I don't know if you guys know, but human rights is actually embodied in our statute. Duke, I mentioned to you earlier, I'm drafting a letter to Mayor Cantrell of New Orleans, just kind of outlining the numerous statutes and constitutional articles that they're violating. And there is human rights are actually in our statutes, and I just kind of came across it when I was doing research on all of this. So they're literally violating individuals' human rights, the right to human dignity, which is embodied in our state's constitution. So anyway, it all goes back to the fact that the Louisiana Department of Health, Secretary of Health Phillips, and State Health Officer Joe Cantor do not acknowledge the fact that these drugs are still considered, by FDA standards, they're still considered experimental.
Let me cut in here for a second. So I want to play devil's advocate here, just for a second. So, do you and the folks with your organization and group and all that?
Yeah.
Do you have a problem with folks who know all of the above, yet still decide to take the vaccine?
No, we're huge proponents of informed consent. Now, if an individual is denied this, everybody has the right to do whatever they want to. One of our mottos, if you will, is that we're the friendly voice of vaccine choice. We don't want to impose anybody's freedom when it comes to this. But we do believe that individuals should have informed consent. And I think it's a criminal act for the Louisiana Department of Health to deny that these drugs are still considered experimental, deny that information to parents, pay parents to have this done to their children without acknowledging the fact that it is an experimental drug. That violates medical ethics, human rights, and our state laws.
Well, yeah, true enough on that, but I would also argue that the parents who accepted the payment and then decided to vaccinate their kids, it's more on them than it is the state. Don't get me wrong, I agree with you in principle in the state deal, but if the parents willingly decide to do it and decide, whatever, we'll take the money and stick the kids.
I know it's a moral dilemma, but if they're being told by physicians who are being informed by Department of Health, if they're listening to the governor's press conference and who acknowledges that these are safe and effective drugs, which even the manufacturers, until the drug has full FDA approval, even the manufacturers cannot say that they are safe and effective. They have to have full FDA approval before any kind of safety or efficacy can be acknowledged. So for the governor to say it, for Louisiana Department of Health to say that these drugs are safe and effective, actually violates FDA standards and protocols. And it goes back to the PREC Act and the fact that they cannot be sued for what they're saying.
All right, so again, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, and Duke, I'm not trying to hog the mic, but I got a good question on that. Is yeah. So if and it's a two-part little deal here, so bear with me for a second. So if the FDA did give full approval, took them out of emergency use, mm-hmm. how many folks would actually be okay with the vaccine then? Because the FDA approved it.
In my opinion, how many people would be okay with it? I'm guessing a lot of people would be okay with it if it has full FDA approval.
And the reason I ask that, because it's kind of a little bit of a trap question, is because we know that the FDA has approved in the past a whole lot of things that we have a whole lot of lawyer billboards around that get to sue because of things that were previously, approved by the FDA.
Exactly. And that's one of our concerns too, is that this FDA approval that Comirnaty has been granted was less than above board, if you will. And it was extremely rushed. You guys know it was extremely rushed. No drug gets FDA approval that quickly. Right. Generally. So, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the information that's being withheld from the consumer by Pfizer at this moment. They have been sued. Well, actually, not Pfizer has not been sued, but the FDA has been sued to have the documentation that Pfizer presented to them, presented to the public. And the FDA is shielding Pfizer. At first, they said, no, you can have it in about 50 years. They were going to give like 500 documents a month for the next 50 years. And then they were sued again. And Aaron Suri, a fantastic attorney who mainly works for a nonprofit called Informed Consent Action Network, sued the FDA again and said, you know what, 50 years, 75 years, they fudged it again. They went to 75 years up to 50. He said, that's not okay. If you can approve this in 6 months, you should be able to, and that's one of the things about FDA approval. Once it has FDA approval, those documents should have been presented and made available to the public, and they weren't. So they're violating their own standards with that withholding of that information. So with Aaron's most recent lawsuit against the FDA, they do have to give, I think they're supposed to give 400,000 documents a month now in 500. Yeah. So we should be able to see what the FDA saw to actually grant that full FDA approval to Comirnaty, not the Pfizer vaccine. Comirnaty is actually owned by BioNTech.
Wow. Now, Jill, I'm going to get us off track here a little bit, but I'm going to come back and get you back on point. But all right, Bossier Parish School Board update.
Dum 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 dum.
So as you would know, some of the people that maybe pay attention to the news media that are not so kind to you have made comments such as, I would rather send my child home rather than the graveyard at this Bossier Parish School Board meeting. You have one school board member, he wants to amend the verbiage to reflect that if you live with someone that is positive, then students stay home, whether the student is positive or not. And I would say the more conservative members that want to make a change are open to that amendment. Then you've got some of the other ones that they're being indifferent either way. So it's kind of where it stands. They're still deliberating. Don't know yet. Also in the comments, Jill, people are wanting to know. they're wanting to know. Okay, and before I even ask this question, I'm going to say to everybody, look, I mean, I know Jill comes from good stock. I'm just going to tell you. I mean, I haven't, Jill. I've never talked to you a day of my life, but she has my vote of support. But people want to know what your educational background is because they're recruiting you to run for office. And then somebody in one of the other comments says, she's too smart to be a politician.
Oh, well, that's so kind, I think. My educational background, actually, I have one more degree than Bill Gates.
There's a joke there, folks, for those of you that aren't tech people. Yeah.
Right. So, actually, my husband and I both graduated from Louisiana Tech. We're both graduates of Bossier High School, and we graduated from Louisiana Tech. I have a degree in marketing. I was in banking for many years, and then we decided to homeschool. And that's when I became basically an autodidact. And I studied probably about 10 years ago. I became super interested in health, and just kind of it progressed from there to, if I wanted to be able to use an alternative treatment for any kind of physical condition that I may have. And I actually looked for alternatives for some health conditions that I did have, and I was able to overcome some of them. So anyway, so that's my background. I've spent the last 5, maybe 6 years actively involved in health freedom advocacy. We really term ourselves as consumer and human rights advocates because this is, it's a consumer issue and it's a human rights issue. I have considered a run for public office, but I don't know that I would be able to work to get as much done on this side because they really are limited. That's one of the beauties of our government is legislature, the governor, the attorney general, school board members. They are really streamlined by statute. We're so frustrated with our legislature right now because they're not doing anything. Well, they're not in session, and they can't do anything until they're in session. They can't do anything really while they're in session until we get how do I put this diplomatically? A decent leadership.
Yeah, but Jill, you and I talked about that today, and we were talking about how the problem today, and it's not just in the legislature, it's with the school boards, it's with a lot of different things. We as a public are electing folks, and we're not electing folks on whether or not they have those leadership abilities and abilities to dig into the issues and I mean, I don't know, get down to another level on things. We're not electing people, with that idea in mind, right?
We're not electing people with a backbone, dude.
There you go. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Yes. And we are electing people that are. Here's the deal. This is what I found in reaching out to candidates, because we survey candidates prior to elections. We're electing our next door neighbor, and they have been gifted with the same education that you and I were. And so many of us are just unaware of the governmental process, the legislative process. We're unaware of our state's constitution and our federal constitution. And it's extremely sad. So much of my work is just educating legislators on what their job is. I can say, Article 1, Section 1 of our state's constitution better than some scripture, because I know what their job is, and I have to tell them so often, what their job is. And it's stated right there in Article 1, Section 1. It starts off with the foundation of government. The origin and purpose of government is to protect, and this is paraphrasing, is to protect the rights of the individual for the betterment of the good of society. And what we have really seen is the reverse of that. The governor for the last 2 years, the Department of Health, has really worked for the good of the whole, the greater good argument, if you will, and that can only happen with the detriment of individual freedom. You can't work in the opposite direction. It has to be a protection of individual rights for the betterment of the whole versus the greater good at the detriment or at the expense of individual freedom.
Well, I'd like to just, throw this in there too for the folks that, wonder about education and that sort of thing and, what makes you an expert on vaccines and all that. I would like to remind everybody that Elon Musk did not graduate from college as a rocket scientist, but pretty much everybody would agree he's a rocket scientist because he just started studying it. Okay.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah. And my children too, just as an aside, my children have experienced vaccine injury, various stages we discovered it. And so that once your children are involved in that kind of issue, mamas, we just take off. We can research everything. And I started with, I ended up with reading vaccine inserts. And it's a wealth of information that's usually not provided to parents when you're sitting in a waiting room or anything like that. So I love to go back to government documents. CDC is really a good source of information on vaccines. You just have to look at it. They don't provide it to you. They're never going to tell you. But it's there. You have to go hunting for it. So
kind of like the old days when we actually went to libraries and had to do actual research.
Right. You have to do some work. You really do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Duke, you still there?
I am here.
Okay, just making sure. I had a little bit of a hiccup in the little software deal, but I don't think it was just I knew it. We lost him. Okay.
Duke's scared.
Duke decided he's had enough, or he's headed down to the school board meeting, one or the other. There he is.
Well, it looks like Zuckerberg zucked me, but we overcome him.
Make sure there's not a black van and a black helicopter circling your house.
You know how my street is. They're always at the end of my street. But it's normally somebody from Bossier Parish or Bossier City. And
right.
I wanted to point out, and this may be the cause of it, somebody messaged me and they said about Jill, they said, "Oh, a tech alumni. The engineers all cheer except for Manchac."
Except for who?
It's an inside joke, Jill. You're not going to get it, but if you're from Bossier City, you are sure getting it.
Yeah, so just to give you a 20-second rundown, Manchac is an engineer. Well, they call themselves an engineering firm or whatever. They are paid a whole lot of money by the Bossier City Council and Caddo, I think the city of Shreveport. Maybe the Caddo Commission pays them too. Anyway, and let's just say they have a tendency to sometimes bungle things up. and correct me if I'm wrong, Duke, isn't he a tech graduate too? And I shouldn't make fun of tech graduates too much because I went to tech too, albeit I didn't graduate. I was going to be a Kimmy and decided to get into tech.
I'm not going to get out there and say that he's from tech because I don't know that.
I can't remember
tech, but I know tech's an engineering school. Lots of engineers come from there. Yeah. And I would say that if Ruttenbuck did come from tech, it would explain a lot because they don't educate dummies over there. Only somebody from tech would have the common sense to realize how you can in 1 year make a project go from $95,000 to $300,000. I mean, you got to be smart to be able to do that and make all the councilmen and the mayor support it, right?
Well, yeah, without much discussion. Well, anyway, so we're off on a little side tangent over here. Sorry, Jill.
Yeah, squirrel.
I'm not at all. Neither is my husband, who's an ME, mechanical engineer.
Right. Yeah. In all seriousness, I'm
to Bossier because they need one.
In all seriousness, I'm from Ruston, so my Ruston friends don't send me hate mail. I'm not really making fun of tech. Okay. All right.
So with that said, Jill, you were earlier talking about experimental drugs, and you were kind of talking about the history of that, which brings me to you guys and your organization. Y'all wasn't holding no punches. You shot some letters off, and you were beating up on Kay Brumley and the Bessie board as well too. And I'm wondering, did they ever give y'all any evidence about experimental measures and whether or not they would do any harm? Did they ever respond to y'all? Because I think y'all asked that question, didn't you?
Oh, we've asked many, many times. It started legislative session 2020. And Representative Buddy Mincy proposed HB 59, which turned into Act 9, which removed all liability from the schools for their mitigation efforts that they implemented, the masking, the social distancing, the hand sanitizing, the chronic hand sanitizing, and the chemicals that they used in the classroom to spray in the classroom to mitigate the virus. You've seen those videos of the guy in full, gear, and he's spraying classrooms and stuff. So we sent them a letter, before they even voted on implementing all these measures. We sent the Bessie board a letter saying, show us that what you're doing is safe. Show us that you have information and data in front of you that says that, masking for 7 to 8 hours is safe, that it doesn't impair education, that it has no impact on brain function. Show us that using the hand sanitizer, 5, 6, 7 times a day has no impact on physical health. Show us that social distancing doesn't cause psychological harm. So we sent them a letter before they even voted on that. And we said, show us the evidence of safety. I think it was about 14 pages. Our letter was.
Actually, I have it pulled up now. It's actually 16 pages, by the way. Let me see if I can get that pulled up. There we go. This will show some of it here. Let me kind of zoom this back a little bit. So, yeah, y'all kind of go point by point down there. Such things as physical distancing on campus is impractical and damaging. Hey, I got a question for you, Jill. So, what do you think about the new directive from the CDC and all that now, those cloth masks that everybody was so hip on, and now we've created a whole cottage industry for the cloth masks with logos and everything. Wait a minute, those might not be such a good idea. You need the N95 now, which is what a lot of us, including on this show a while back, pointed out. Wait a minute, come on, folks. So
yeah. I'm extremely disturbed by it, and we shared a video probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I guess now, of Dr. Cantor at the press conference when all this was. Lena Wynn, Dr. Wynn, was the person that kind of got the ball rolling on that. She's the former president of Planned Parenthood and has kind of become a spokesperson for the CDC. A huge advocate of telling children and parents what to do and masking and whatnot. And she made this astonishing statement that masking was just basically theater. And we're like, we've been saying this for like 2 years, you're finally saying it. And then, Cantor trots out in the press conference and he's just like, if you really want protection, you're going to wear an N95. So I screen recorded it and I shared it on our social media channels. And I was like, how do you say cloth masks don't work without saying cloth masks don't work? It's infuriating that we have known this, and we've been fact checked and we've been censored on our social media channels because we knew. I mean, even in the FDA, okay, you guys, I don't know if you know, but cloth masks are under EUA, just like the vaccines are. So for the purpose intended, for the use that they're intended for right now, it's experimental. So individuals have the option, children have always had the option under federal law, they've had the option to refuse masking because it's an experimental medical intervention. And part of the FDA granting of the EUA for cloth masks, it specifies on latter pages, I think page 7 or 8, it says that for the manufacturers of a cloth mask, they have to include the information that it will not stop a virus.
Well, Jill, I just wanted to point out, as you may or may not know, we here at Bossier Watch are high achievers. And
high achievers.
I don't
know if I go that far, Duke, but okay.
Early on, we were on top of the fact that cloth masks didn't work. And to keep in, we wanted to make sure that we didn't cross-contaminate anybody. And as you can see, we took full precautions early on just to make sure we wanted to protect
Now, I would like to point out,
public.
I would like to point out that Duke is obviously far more cautious than me. He had on his respirator because he didn't even want the virus getting out through the interwebs.
I mean, the last thing we wanted to do was the internet to catch on fire. I mean, we did not want that to happen.
Nice. I love that you guys knew about this. I mean, so many people fell for it and you guys didn't. So bravo.
No, and truthfully, we did a deep dive. I don't remember which show, and we got into the cloth mask and got down to the micron level and exactly what they would and what they wouldn't do, and the fact that a cloth mask or all these masks were just it was irrelevant, and there's a lot of studies, like you said, the media ignored, the public never heard that side. The mainstream media, scared the living hell out of people.
Right, exactly. And it was extremely frustrating because we knew we have, I think, a 12-page document on our website with studies about masks. We had about May of 2020, we started compiling a document with just mask studies, just showing people they don't work. They don't work. And it's more than just the fact that they don't work. There's never been a study, a random control trial on the safety of this procedure. That's why it's under EUA. It's experimental. There's no safety studies on it, especially for children. There were some, they looked into some studies on medical professionals using them in the medical workplace, surgeons in the surgery theater using it. And they actually showed that those surgeons, especially the ones that had long procedures, actually did experience physical discomfort using them. We kind of, it's not really a joke. It's kind of an off-color, it's kind of bad taste, but how people started writing right and left on their, amenities or whatever they were having surgery on, like operate here and not here and that kind of thing. We were kind of joking. Well, maybe they've had, so little oxygen with that mask on that they really do need that help. So going into, the Bessie adopting all of this, these procedures on the masking and stuff like that, we knew that took place in July, the vote on that. And we knew going into it, because we had this document with all these studies on it, that there were no safety studies on it. And that was our main concern. And I was thinking about it today, because the chatter has shifted to N95s. The higher your efficacy on a mask, the lower your safety is going to be. So a mask with 100% efficacy, now think about it, a mask with 100% efficacy has zero safety, zero. That person's going to die if it has 100% efficacy because nothing is getting through, including oxygen. N95s, my husband and I had a conversation about it because he, of course, works in an industrial environment. And if they have to use N95s in their workplace, they have to have something called a fit test. And so when the masks were, started to become required, OSHA did away with the fit test requirement. So I'm like, who the heck is looking out for these workers if they're, forced to be wearing these masks? And now, of course, they've moved on to the N95s. And one of the things that shocked me to when all of this came about, and one of the things I requested, was the evidence of safety of pregnant women wearing masks, because not only are they depriving themselves of oxygen, they're depriving their baby of oxygen as well. And there are some studies that are coming out now talking about children born during the pandemic, the lowering of their IQ. I think that it's around 29% IQ reduction.
Well, now, again, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because I actually typically do a whole lot of research. But let me give you an example. So I don't know if you're aware of how Japanese culture treats masks. Okay.
Right.
And honestly, they don't do it because of disease. They have long done it because of smog. Let me give you an example. I used to build boats for a living many years ago. Mm-hmm. And we had a Japanese dealer that they traveled over, with family and all that, and it's a big ordeal, and they're really cool people with their interpreter and gracious people and all that. Anyway, so I got the chance and but they all had masks, even in the boat factory, back in the gel coat part and rough finish and all that, we wore masks because of the fiberglass dust and the VOCs
Right.
from the gel. But anyway, they wore their mask everywhere. And then I had the opportunity to drive them back to the airport, which was about an hour drive, and they had their mask on in the Suburban. And so I asked the interpreter, I said, I don't want to certainly don't want to offend them, so should I wear a mask? And they were like, no, they've got theirs and they're fine, but, it's just part of the culture. This was in 1996 and 97. So I do want to point out that, I'm no fan of forcing everybody to wear a mask, especially in the type of way that the government's been trying to do it. But then again, the Japanese folks are relatively smart, and they've been wearing masks for a long time. So I'd like to point that out.
Yes, and there's another group of people that wear a mask for traditional reasons, and those are Muslim women who are forced to wear masks. And there's actually been studies of them and the ramifications of long-term mask wearing, and it's not good. It's actually in our mask document if you want to take a look at it. So there is some harm in that. And just because, Rex, I just want to point out, but that just because a culture does it doesn't mean it's necessarily safe. So the fact that they do it doesn't indicate there's ever been any studies to show that it's effective or that it doesn't cause harm. And again, that was one of our issues and it's the same with mask at this point too. You're welcome to do it if you're fully informed, whatever.
Well, yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah, do it. But as far as like the government having the authority to tell me or to mask my children to enter a building or to deny them an education if they don't have a mask on, I have an issue with that.
Well, and look, let's be realistic too. If there was a chemical spill or, they decided to nuke Barksdale and the explosion didn't kill us all, and the government came in and said, this is an emergency, everybody put these masks on, there's radiation. For a temporary setup, as much as I'm not pro-government, big government and all that, I could see and understand and would likely go along with that. But the problem that I have is they've been dragging this out, and like y'all pointed out in that letter, you basically try to convince the kids and the adults that you're going to kill your grandmother if you're not wearing a mask and she's wearing 3 masks. That's the problem I have with it.
Right. I mean, it goes back to just the name of it, personal protective equipment. If it's personal protective, then I should have the choice. But they've turned this into, it's not personal, it's your neighbor that you're protecting. And that's one of those psychological things, tools, and part of the mass formation issue is this idea that we have to do it to protect somebody else. Give us informed consent. Tell us whether or not this personal protective device is going to protect this person, not my neighbor. And honestly, this is another gripe of mine. I'm sorry, Rex. But,
no, go ahead.
The idea that we have a responsibility to do anything for our neighbor. Granted, I don't want to get into the moral issue behind that, but the government cannot compel us to do something for our neighbor. They just can't. If we are our neighbor's health, when are we responsible for our neighbor's wealth? Or the fact that they might have, groceries or something like that. Now, I, as a human being with compassion, I may provide something for my neighbor out of my own generosity, but the government cannot force me to be generous to my neighbor.
Well, hold on just a second. I have to correct you on that. They do it all the time. They literally do it. They literally do it now. I agree with you in principle, but look, your freedom and rights are only as good as the least restrictive laws which squeeze on those rights, and you don't file suit to get it corrected and generally have to make it all the way to SCOTUS, and most people don't have enough money to go all the way to SCOTUS with it. So
we're talking again about something that's tangible. We're not talking about something that the government is forcing literally on our body or into our body.
Well, I don't know about that either, because we have warning signs on everything.
Again, the government's not putting anything on my body or in my body or that of my children. That's and the whole idea that a mask
Fluoride, chlorine.
is
Shall
right.
I keep going on?
Yeah, I'm opposed to fluoride as well. So, but the idea
I don't,
that they,
Jill, I don't know how
yeah,
this is possible, but you're being recruited to run for governor, and they don't even know if you support widgets or not. I mean, I
I
don't
mean,
get it.
what's a widget?
There's your answer, folks. Do you support widgets? What's a widget? Hey, I want to circle back for a second because we had a couple of comments about hand sanitizer. So here's the thing. I don't use hand sanitizer, not because I'm wear a tinfoil hat or anything like that, folks. I would encourage you to go do your homework about hand sanitizer. And there are lots of studies and arguments that the overuse and abuse of hand sanitizer, which is its own industry as well, as we all know, actually helps contribute to some of the resistant strains of viruses and bacteria and some of these superbugs that we have. So you're actually just as good washing with soap and water vigorously, like we were taught when we were children, as hand sanitizer. But if you want to use hand sanitizer, go right ahead. Just be careful of the ones that if you just Google hand sanitizer bad, just don't use the ones that the FDA recommends against that have actually, had contaminants in them and all sorts of things. So hand sanitizer is not the end all be all. All right, I'm off my soapbox, dude. Go ahead.
the FDA actually banned 135 different brands of hand sanitizer right around the time that they started implementing all these mitigation efforts. And then I actually did a little bit of research on that, Rex, because I wondered why. Why are they banning all these products? And of course, they were harming people. And interestingly enough, some of the manifestations, I guess you would say, of chronic hand sanitizer, of these toxic hand sanitizers are very, very similar to the condition that the Department of Health keeps warning us about, the MIS-C, the inflammation issue that's associated with COVID in children. So there's been a couple of deaths associated with hand sanitizers, and that's one of the reasons, I thought it was so interesting that the concern over multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, that's what MIS-C stands for, but the MIS-C looks similar to hand sanitizer toxicity.
Yeah. Now, I got to put up a comment. Our good friend Tim Euler says, sorry, Rex, I'm addicted to hand sanitizer. I like the smell. Stop wounding me. Tim, just go get some alcohol-based soap, and you can smell the same thing. Use soap. But, hey, if you want to use hand sanitizer, Tim, go right ahead. I believe it should be a much freer country than it is. Go right ahead, Tim.
And there's some really good and all natural like hand sanitizers. I'm not opposed to it too. I have a couple of brands that I keep in my purse for restaurant use and whatnot. So you can find a good product that's not going to poison your body.
Yeah, sure. All right, dude, go ahead.
No, Tim Euler. I think that was some dishwashing soap. It wasn't hand sanitizer that president was saying drink. It was some kind of dishwashing soap or Tide Pods, I think, or something. Or who knows? That was the mainstream media that was putting that out there, and we know that was not true, which actually is a good segue into the next part, which is my favorite part of this that I wanted to go into all night. Because when I like heard and saw this, I about lost my mind. So, of everybody watching the show, have any of you ever heard me say the term mass formation psychosis? Has that ever rolled off my lips in any show that we've ever done?
Maybe once or twice there, Mr. Lowry. I'm going to start getting this queued up, so just, keep rambling for just a minute or so.
So I don't know about you, Rex, and Jill, I do know about you, how you feel, I think. I'm pretty sure I do. So are we experiencing mass formation psychosis? And I'm wondering, what is your thoughts, Jill, about the mainstream media? Because we're on social media here. Rex and I describe ourselves as what kind of journalists, Rex?
Amateur journalists who give our 2 cents and get on our soapbox often.
Yeah, we're amateurs. We don't get paid. We're not making money. We're not professional. We're not professionals, but I see, the mainstream media cuts people like you who have obviously done their homework. You've studied the issues, you're articulate about it, but they cut you out. And is that a part of mass formation psychosis? And how would you even know anything about mass formation psychosis? Two questions right there.
Okay, yes. There, I carry a message that's counter to the narrative, if you will, and I have from the get-go. I have advocated for, individuals to have basically a say in their government, and it's been taken away from us. And so, yes, I have seen mass formation psychosis. I didn't know the name of it until recently. Oh, yeah, there's my.
Yeah, who is that guy?
I jokingly refer to him as my BFF, Dr. Robert Malone.
I've seen that guy somewhere. Maybe it was with Joe Rogan.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy. But look, I interviewed Dr. Malone before Joe Rogan interviewed Dr. Malone.
Aha.
So we've
Well,
done.
how about that?
Yeah, we had a couple of what we kind of term educational Zoom calls for members of the legislature, and Dr. Malone was our second interviewee. Our first one was Dr. McCullough. So Dr. Malone came on a Zoom call with us, and several legislators were on there, and we were able to ask him a question. I think we kept him on the call for almost 2 hours. He's an extremely generous man with his time and the information that he shares. This picture was actually taken at the Capitol on December 6th, when it's the day that, Robert Kennedy Jr., Dr. Malone,
Yeah.
there were several others there, but I got to meet him in person that day. We had dinner that evening with several friends, and he's just an amazing man. But his presentation on mass formation psychosis is incredible, and it kind of explains, what we've been seeing. And it's not, this is not fringe. There have been articles for at least a year now on how governments, especially over in the UK, it's been leaked in the UK, about how governments are using psychological measures to really control the populace. Because, in normal times, we would not listen to the government on this issue, but we have been, I guess, just beaten down with the idea that we were going to kill our grandmother, that we're going to harm our neighbor just by breathing. And the idea that we've transferred that information to our children is just, I don't know, it's just so incredibly sad that we've allowed ourselves to be played like this. But yeah, his presentation on mass formation psychosis is really interesting. He's a wonderful guy, and he has been a huge benefit to our state. He, of course, knows the Attorney General, has one of the assistant attorney generals has him on speed dial for information. So he's just an incredible man, extremely generous with the information that he has and willing to share it.
Go ahead, dude.
Oh, you're looking at me. Sorry.
Oh.
I was looking at.
I'm reading comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was doing that, as well as reading something that just come through on the Bossier School Board.
Dum 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 dum. I got to get us a drum roll sound effect thing here.
I wish we could pull this video up because I would love to see, but apparently it may end up being our youth that save us.
Really?
Apparently a student has gotten up and spoke and said he's so far behind, he's not been sick, and he ain't never going to be able to recover. Wow.
They're not. We have done such irreparable harm to this generation. It's unbelievable. It breaks my heart.
Well, fortunately, we have the interwebs and the internet these days, and we have a lot of folks homeschooling. And so, I'd argue that while a lot of the kids, the biggest thing to me is the mix back and forth, and we're going to do this, and oh my goodness, you're going to kill grandma, and oh no, now we're going back to school, and da-da-da. To me, that's worse. And then missing out on the social experiences, good and bad, of high school and public school, to me, is the biggest thing that they're missing out on. Because, there's lots of homeschooling resources, tons of resources, really good stuff on the web. But then again, some kids, they learn better in a classroom environment with an instructor in front of them, and mom is not always the best person for that in a homeschool deal too. We homeschooled our kids as well, so.
Yeah,
And
this is
another.
my 14th year as a homeschool parent. It's extremely rewarding, but from a citizen's standpoint, I guess, if you will, it interferes so much with the economy. We're pulling workers out of the workforce every time a child has to quarantine, especially younger children. Older children tend to have the capability of being able to, be a little bit responsible by themselves at home. But when you're talking about younger students, every time they get sent home, a parent gets pulled out of the workforce. So not only are we interfering with the economy, we're with education, but we're interfering with the economy too. And it's one of the reasons, I don't know if you noticed, but one of the reasons they shortened the quarantine time from 10 to 5 days was not necessarily it had nothing to do with science. It had everything to do with the fact that companies were complaining because they had no workforce.
Yeah, and to me, that's pretty much my biggest gripe with this whole scenario for the last couple of years is that they have trashed and thrashed the economy over this.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing to me. We can recover from almost all of that. We can get the kids back on track eventually. They're pretty resilient and all that sort of thing. But thrashing the economy, that's going to be tough. So sorry.
Well, Bossier Parish School Board break here. So, for those of you in Bossier Parish watching that vote for your school board members, note that your school board member Tammy Smith and Glenn Bullard made a motion to table the motion made by Bass and I think Dennis Bamberg. So basically, what you guys should know about that attempt there, they're trying to get it.
Well, yeah, and I just want to let Adam know, because I know he periodically does watch the show, and so does Dennis. I know I'm behind you 100%, Duke. I'm pretty sure you are too, as far as what they were trying to accomplish, right?
Well, I'm not saying it's done, because apparently Dennis is not giving up, and he is making an amendment to try to set a date for the end of the implementation or the policy, for set a date for it to end. I guess he's trying to salvage it. So they're fighting. I'll give Dennis Bamberg credit. He's not giving in, and neither is Bass. So, we've been at it, an hour or so, and they're still debating it?
I know. It looks like we're going to have to sit here and talk to Jill for another couple of hours to let them get through, so then we can talk about the school board.
So, Jill, sorry to interject and cut us off. And this probably, I don't know, though. You're on top of your game. You can handle it.
Yeah.
You've been in a lot of the debates down there, and you've been in the trenches. Has this been your primary focus of lately, or what other issues have you been involved in?
This mainly, last legislative session, I did sit in on free speech. I testified on behalf of Representative Beryl Amade's bill regarding big tech and interference and censorship and free speech on the what we would consider the universal town hall or town square, if you will. So I had an opportunity to speak on that because we've experienced it. One of our endeavors was a little grassroots movement we call Reopen Louisiana that we started in April of 2020. When we saw that our message needed to be spread to a broader audience rather than just those that were concerned about health freedom. So, and we were concerned too from a citizen's perspective. We were really concerned that small business owners were burdened with disease mitigation when they should never be, burdened with disease mitigation unless, they're in the restaurant business. We don't want Hep A from a restaurant, but everybody is, nobody can be held accountable for the spread of a virus. So anyway, so we expanded our reach with Reopen Louisiana, and we kind of tried to bring in a broader appeal. And we were, because I love to be a little bit sassy with my comments regarding the governor, I use that platform to kind of hide behind until it became, readily available that I was actually behind all that. But I used a lot of sassy language with the governor and my comments to him. And so we gained a lot of traction there. And our analytics were showing that we were, reaching about 1.4 million people in, a week and a half, 2 weeks time. And then we made a post about the safety of masks, and we showed some pictures of children with impetigo, because that's one of the issues. It can cause a bacterial infection around the mouth. And it was not done in poor taste. We did not, exploit the children by any means. We covered their eyes in the pictures and just showed their mouth. And we got hit by a warning by Facebook that our message was inappropriate. And our reach went from 1.4 million down to like hundreds. So we could really speak to the impact of what social media censorship can do to getting a message out there. So I was able to go down and support Representative Amadei's bill on free speech. I was actually in the room waiting to testify on behalf of Representative Edmonston's HR 20 when the discussion on CRT took place. The 5-hour discussion with Representative Ray Garofalo, being chair of the Education Committee, and that whole fiasco, that was interesting to sit in and watch all of that. And I have a really good perspective on all that. But anyway, so yeah, I've done a couple of other things, but mainly it's been health freedom. Every time I've testified, even on the free speech bill, I took the opportunity to share our concerns about mask safety on children. And it was actually after that, my testimony on HR 20, I ran over across the street to the Claiborne building and testified in front of a Bessie board meeting. And that's when I called them out and asked them, I was like, how many human rights violations can one state agency commit? So, but anyway, yeah, mainly my focus has been on health freedom. I did hold a rally across from the governor's mansion back in July of 2020. Had some fantastic speakers from across the state. We staged it right across the street. There's a nice big empty lot, if you will, grassy lot across from the governor's mansion. So we held it right across there, brought in our speakers, literally, generators with speakers so he could hear us. And but yeah, all of it has been focused on an individual's rights and government's limitations.
Well, speaking of all that, because it sounds like you're definitely busy, if people want to be able to reach out to you or find more information or join your group and cause and all that, what is the best way for somebody to find you or find out all of this information?
Yeah, we have a fantastic website with all of our information on there. healthfreedomla.org. I highly recommend taking a look at our exemption information. We have school exemption information as well as employee exemption information on how to fill out a religious exemption under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But for the school exemptions, especially considering what's coming up in New Orleans, New Orleans is going to be requiring 5 and up to be vaccinated to attend their city schools starting February 3rd. So we have what I think is a much better sample exemption form on our website. I think, yeah, you're looking at it now. I think it's under exemptions, if I'm not mistaken, that's the tab. So our exemption form excludes the language on staying home in the middle of an outbreak. I don't know if you guys saw, but Representative Barry Ivy has already introduced an HCR, House Continuing Resolution, for the next legislative session, which starts March 14th. But he's intending to suspend 17170 Section F for COVID mitigation efforts. And that means that that has always allowed Louisiana Department of Health to basically send home individuals in the middle of an outbreak that are unvaccinated. And we know that the COVID vaccine does not prevent transmission or infection. So our issue with that, the language that the Louisiana Department of Health offers on their exemption form is that the parent is acknowledging that their child will stay home in the middle of an outbreak if they submit an exemption form for the vaccine. And we're saying, no, nobody should stay home in an outbreak, because the vaccine, anybody can get, COVID with, even if they have 5 boosters at this point. Data is showing that they can still contract COVID and they can still spread COVID. So our exemption form that we have available on our website excludes all that. It follows state statute, which literally just requires that an individual submit written dissent for any vaccine that they're opposed to for any reason, and all they have to do is sign it and turn it in. So you can find that on our website. You can find us on social media channels. My preferred platform is Facebook, even though we're in kind of this abusive relationship.
It's a love-hate relationship.
It is, but I speak it better. I'm kind of old, so I'm not really good at new technology. But we're on other platforms as well. We're on Telegram, Twitter. Twitter's kind of become, even though Twitter is a cesspool, and I don't agree with their business dealings either, but it is a great way to connect with legislators, scientists. Oh my gosh, it's just, granted, it is a cesspool, but you can really find some good information from some solid scientists on Twitter.
Okay, Jill.
Yes.
Okay, Jill. I've got to get you on track here on this one, because, all right. So, Bossier Parish School Board, we were hoping that there was going to be something positive come out of Bossier Parish tonight, but I've got bad news to report. Apparently, as we were talking about spineless elected officials, apparently Bossier shows its colors and it has some spineless elected officials. And I've already personally named a couple of those in the comments. I don't know at this point if it matters that if I do it personally or if I do it as Louisiana Watch. But either way,
you do it as Louisiana Watch. You're at 50%. I'm the other 50%. So yeah.
Well, either way, I did it under my name. But so what I wanted to segue to was the EBBI policy, rules, or what have you. And you and I had a little bit of a discussion. So the interesting thing, so the Bossier Parish School Board tonight, they're talking about amending, their rules and their policies. And I guess they would say, oh, we're following the guidance of Bessie or what have you. And, tonight, they probably had some attorneys sitting off there to the side saying, hey, guys, if y'all don't do this, you're going to be liable for this. You're going to be liable for that. The sky's going to fall. The governor's going to come down from a chariot from heaven and descend on top of all of your heads. What would you say to that?
I would say that they're violating the law.
Wait a minute, what? Who's violating the law? The Bossier Parish School Board's violating the law?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And have been for quite a while.
You're gonna have to expand on that a little bit, because I'm going to tell you, I don't think the majority of folks in the public that I don't think they understand what you're talking about. I don't think they even have a clue what EBBI is. I don't think they even understand what you're talking about.
Well, I'm sitting here looking for my letter that I wrote to the school superintendents recently. I'll have to see if I can find it while I'm chatting. But the EBBI policy is something that was put in place 2020 legislative session. Remember, I was telling you that the legislature passed HB 59, which prevented or removed any kind of liability from the schools for their mitigation efforts. And that was translated into law as Act 9, literally removed liability. It stated that Bessie was going to set the standards and the guidelines for each school district, that all of their guidance would be informed by CDC guidance, not conformed, but informed by CDC guidance. But there was this little stipulation in there that it was only for the 2020-2021 school year. And as I mentioned to you before, after I testified for HR 20, ran across the road to Claiborne Building and gave a little short testimony in front of a Bessie Strategic Committee meeting. And after I testified there, a little group of us went to the hallway. Kate Brumley was there, had a conversation with Dr. Brumley, who's the Louisiana school superintendent, statewide school superintendent, and he told us, you know, we were asking him, this was almost the end of that school year, and we said, you know, where's the emergency? Why are the kids still wearing masks? When is the masking going to end? And he told us then that it expired in June. It expired in June. This policy that the schools had to abide by expired in June. So we shot that out on social media. You know, this is going to expire in sometime at the end of June, and end of June would be the end of the summer school session for the 2021 school year. And so these parents, I swear, this has been the best thing about this pandemic, is, if there could be one, I call it COVID silver linings, but it's the parents that have really become aware and have become like citizen investigators, if you will, on issues relating to school board standards and whatnot. And so there's a fantastic group, a friend of mine over in West Monroe, Tiffany Hatton, who started an organization called Parents Choice Louisiana. There's other parent groups that are involved in this as well. Louisiana Save Our Schools, LEA. I can't remember what LEA stands for off the top of my head, but there's several of these organizations, Unmasked groups, the Unmasked Bossier group, Unmasked Caddo group, you know, Angie Darnell, Christy Poe, Brandy Pooh, sorry, mispronounced her name, Paige Lowry. I mean, there's so many fantastic parents that are Jess Boudreau that are doing all the research on all of this stuff. And Tiffany presented to the Ouachita Parish School Board on Tuesday and said, look, this Bulletin 749 says that this expired, I think it was June 30th of 2021. You guys are still following this policy, which gives your local school superintendent like this executive authority, and these decisions are being made without public comment. You know, there's been no vote in front of the public in regards to mask or mitigation or quarantine. All of this is coming down from on high, if you will, from LDH and through the CDC. Well, they're not an elected body. They don't get to determine what happens in the school. You know, Jeff Landry wrote an opinion on that too, and determined that the only legislative bodies that could determine what happens in the school is the legislature and Bessie. So they cannot keep telling us, LDH cannot keep telling us what to do in our schools. The CDC, of course, is not an elected body. They don't represent anybody in the state of Louisiana. Following or not following their guidance has nothing to do with state statute. You can do what you want. And so to come to find out, these school boards have still been under the impression that they're supposed to be under this EBBI, this emergency standard, and they're not. So Tiffany Hatton approached the Ouachita School Board on Tuesday, and they voted unanimously to do away with it.
So what you're telling me is that the Bossier Parish School Board thinks that they're following something that exists out there, and in reality, it really doesn't exist. So in fact, in their ignorance as elected officials, and I'm going to say that, I mean, and then they can all blame me. I don't care. Look, I'll meet you in the parking lot out behind the woodshed, whatever you choose. But in their ignorance, they're following some policy that was a has-been policy, and they're doing it because they're scared they're going to get sued. And in reality, they're placing themselves in a position to be liable for the actions of what they're doing now. And
exactly.
Now, go ahead.
Well, one of my concerns about all of this kind of goes back to that initial question that you asked me, Duke, about, you know, did we ever get an answer about whether or not these mitigation efforts, was I ever presented any evidence of safety? We presented to them that what they were doing from the get-go was not safe, that there was no random control trials on any of the stuff that they were implementing. So that kind of negates Act 9 had a little blurb in there that if they did it with willful neglect, I say that they have negated all of their liability-free, activities by the fact that we did come to them and say, look, are your mitigation efforts safe? They could not provide us with any kind of evidence of information. They violated that one section that they acted with willful negligence because they did not. RS 1781, which is the statute that covers what a school superintendent can do. Like I said before, everything that the governor can do, everything that the state legislature, it's mapped out in statute. RS 1781 kind of gives an outline of what the school superintendent can do. The first section in there says that his policies have to be for the best of all the individuals in the school. They did not look to see that what they were doing was best for all the individuals in the school. This, social distancing, this sending kids home, when somebody tests positive, all of this is detrimental to students. So what they did not fulfill their fiduciary duty from the get-go, and making sure that what they were implementing was safe for every student. So yeah, they have been from day one. They have been violating, in my opinion, their fiduciary duties. They've been violating state statutes in regards to religious freedom. I had a conversation with one school superintendent, and I asked him, I said, why aren't you accepting the religious exemptions that students started submitting at the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year, last August? Because the Attorney General sent out a religious exemption and conscientious exemption for masking. And we actually put out something as well as far as an exemption, saying, parents, we're not going to sue if our kid catches COVID at school or whatever. And so I asked him, I said, why aren't you guys accepting any of these religious exemptions? And he said, well, the governor sent us a letter saying we couldn't. And I said, wait a minute. The governor's infringing on religious freedom, because you guys know RS 29736 says that our constitutionally protected freedoms are not diminished during a public health emergency. So I said, wait a minute. He sent you guys a letter saying that you could not accept religious exemptions, and he said, no, not in so many words. And that's when I knew it was a letter that the governor sent to Cade Brumley, I think around August 6th, because he made his declaration on August 2nd. But I think it was around August 6th, the AG had sent out the religious exemption forms, and the governor sent a letter to Cade Brumley and said, these are the only exemptions that you can accept. There's a medical exemption. You can be drinking. You can be public speaking and not wearing a mask. You can be hard of hearing or something along those lines. But there's about 5, 6, 7 exemptions or exceptions, if you will, to his mask mandate. Religious exemption was purposefully excluded from that list. And that's what the superintendent was telling me. He said, the governor didn't give us permission to accept religious exemptions. And I was like, wait a minute. The governor doesn't have to give you permission. It's not the governor's job to give you permission. It's our state's constitution that gives you permission to accept religious exemptions. And you've been violating that from day one. I can tell you right now, I have a strongly held religious objection to masking my face. And there's no way in the world that any government official would tell anybody of any kind of religious belief that does cover their face to take that covering off. We would never tell a Muslim to remove a face covering. A government official would never tell anybody of the Muslim faith to remove their face covering. Let
me pause you right there, just to interrupt for a second. But here's the problem, okay? And let me put up a comment from Tori here. She says, time to file affidavits and litigation on these boards. Well, here's the problem. She is correct. People have to do something, because it can be illegal or against this statute or whatever all you want, but till somebody gets kicked out of office and or thrown in jail, they can keep doing it. Do you want to know the real reason why nobody would ever tell a Muslim to remove their face covering?
Tell me.
Because they would come bomb the building.
Yes, and we would be canceled, Rex, if we did that. I mean,
Absolutely. There would be action. There would be action taken. So the challenge is, and I know I'm going to get now. I'll be on Al Jazeera, Duke. I had to join you from years ago.
You know, I'm sitting here biting my tongue because there's people out there that are chomping at the bits for me to say something.
Well, and look, nothing against. I've got some Muslim friends. Nothing against my Muslim friends.
No,
I believe in freedom of religion. But the fact of the matter is, they don't. You know, you can't even draw a cartoon figure of Muhammad, or and I'm not going to get into all that without literally getting bombed. So there is a legit fear there. The problem is these same legislators, and the point that I'm trying to make is that they don't fear the public. And I'm not saying that we should go bomb any school boards or anything like that, but we should attend those meetings. And then when the elections come around to elect the school board members and everybody that's in an elected position, you get rid of them and put somebody else in there, which also gets the bureaucrats reappointed when that time is.
Now, Rex. Yes, Katie Larkin, I have already been on Al Jazeera. Okay,
yes, he really has.
Yeah, that's off my bucket list. But you raise a good point here. So you're sitting here talking about, accountability, and you're talking about things. Interestingly, the Bossier Parish School Board had an opportunity to actually, be a trendsetter and step ahead tonight. But what also did they ask for tonight? What did they vote to put on the ballot here in the near term?
You talking about, let's say maintaining the tax status quo?
Before the show, you and I were talking, was we going to support the tax renewals or not? We were talking about it. So for the public watching, you just had a school board who erred on the side of government over the interests of their citizens or their tax base. I'm wondering, what do the taxpayers who obviously in this district are not in support of continuing all of these, I would say, government edicts on them. I mean, I'm wondering what they think about these renewals now. Do you think you should continue to support something that doesn't represent you or your interests?
Well, let's just remember a couple of years ago and what the number was. Let's see, wasn't it something like basically 75% to 25%? Their attempted 40% increase got nailed down.
But that was a tax increase. This is a maintaining.
Hold on. But at that point, one of the arguments was the taxes are already, by a lot of people, too high. Because look, the fact of the matter is, and I'm not anti-teacher, teachers deserve a better pay, blah, 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 blah. But once we pulled out the actual salaries and did the public information request and started posting how top-heavy the school board actually is, they went ballistic. Maybe we should pull that back out again and reinvestigate that.
Well, if they're worried about renewing these taxes, I mean, you would think they would give some consideration to the taxpayer, because obviously they're not willing to change any of their policy because they maybe are more concerned about being able to get some of that government COVID money. Maybe.
Well, maybe so. Let me change tactics. Instead of doing my normal,
Jill sitting here saying like, you guys, let me out of this.
Yeah, Jill, you might want to hit that hang up button any second now. Because I'm about to piss off a bunch of, I'm only going to piss off 25% of the people. I can say that with certainty. Okay, so here's the thing. First and foremost, I have nothing against the Bossier Parish teachers, and they do a great job and blah, blah, blah. My whole deal with the tax deal 2 years ago, or 2.5, whatever, was that they were top heavy and trying to literally do a 40% increase. It's the math, folks. All right. But here's my thing is, rather than going down negative right off the bat, maybe I should come out and actually, don't be shocked, do something positive. You had at least 2 school board members that were willing to stick their necks out for this tonight. Duke, correct me if I'm wrong based on watching the notes from the school board meeting, and that was certainly Adam Bass and Dennis Bamberg. Maybe one of the first things we should do is everybody watching the show, send them positive messages, let them know you appreciate what they're trying to do and accomplish, and what can you, as a Bossier Parish tax-paying citizen, likely with kids, or whatever in school, what can you do to help them move forward with this and not just table it or or put a short ending date on it and that sort of thing. Maybe we should start positive first. I'm turning a new leaf this year, Duke.
Okay, well, you are, and so I'll jump on the other side and play devil's advocate, and I'll say, you know what? A lot of people would say, well, you know what? It's a day late and a dollar short. They should have been jumping to the plate trying to do something 6 months ago or even a year ago. Why were they not doing it then? It's great. Yeah, they're here today playing ball, but where were they a year ago? And it goes back to the original thing of us talking about, as a public, the people that we're choosing to elect to public office. I don't know that we, as the electors, I don't know that we're doing enough of our homework on these folks. We're not vetting them enough. We're not getting enough answers out of them. I mean, Jill, chime in at any time. I'm sorry. We will talk all night long.
No, I completely agree. And that's why one of our, I need the long one, if you will. Sorry, my phone, I'm afraid my phone's going to die. So I'm asking my daughter for a plug, but, that's why one of our efforts is to survey every candidate. During the 2019 election, we had a spreadsheet and we asked questions of every candidate. And you guys know there's 139 seats, 138 seats in the legislature. And when you multiply that times 5, sometimes 15 candidates per seat, we tried to survey every single candidate to ask their stance on that. And that's when I came to find out, these people are just like you and I. And that's one of the reasons why, I'm not planning on running for office for anything or at least not because I don't understand taxes. I understand health freedom, but when you guys start talking about taxes, I'm just like, wait a minute. I hope he doesn't ask me a question about a tax.
Let me make a suggestion to you. Yeah. You are very well versed on everything you're speaking about. Even the couple of little curveballs that I've thrown at you, you handled exceedingly well. You are right where you need to be, which is educating the public. You need to be the go-between. Don't get into politics and let it corrupt you. Right. My opinion.
Yeah, well, just I'm going to be the devil advocate for you, Rex. I have some wonderful friends in the legislature, and they're just as frustrated as you and I on this issue. You just had it to me because
you've mentioned a lot of those names tonight. They're friends of mine as well too, and I love them to death. Beryl Amade is one of them, and they're fighters. They are fighters, and there's only so much that they can do. It really is.
Right.
But there's a lot of other ones, and it's those lukewarm ones. Those are the ones that we have the problems with.
Yes. Can I tell you a little bit about some lukewarm ones, especially in y'all's neck of the woods?
Rock on.
Okay. So just so your viewers will know, in the 2020 the second extraordinary session, because they had 3 sessions in 2020. In the second session, the second extraordinary session, which is basically the third session, we supported 2 pieces of legislation that your viewers will be really interested in. We introduced a piece of legislation that would require schools to make sure parents were informed of the exemption law. Okay. We feel like every parent should know that if a vaccine mandate is coming, that parents should be informed that they have the option to refuse. So we simple ask, it's in statute. Send home, just add that language, add that verbiage on any kind of information. You guys know they send home schools saying, oh, your child is due for this and this and this. And they're already sending home information. We've sent a letter to school superintendents. They're already sending home misinformation saying your child is due a COVID shot. I'm like, it's not required for school. Don't tell them that it's due. And then they're not telling them that they have an exemption for that. So we just asked, put it on forms. Just simply say that, here's what's due. But if you don't feel like it's necessary for your child, you can just simply send in an exemption. When we presented that to the House Health and Welfare Committee, it got 3 votes. 3 votes.
Wow.
And One of the state representatives that was opposed to it was State Representative Thomas Presley, who is over in the Shreveport area. And then same evening, we introduced legislation. These were all both carried by State Representative Danny McCormick. And he also introduced legislation that would prohibit a COVID-19 vaccine mandate in the workplace. And that piece of legislation got 2 votes in the House Health and Welfare Committee. Again, State Representative Thomas Presley was adamantly opposed to it. Also, an organization that came and submitted a red card in opposition to that was Lobby, the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. So we hope that they will support employees in this next coming legislative session and support any kind of legislation that is submitted that would protect employees in the workplace. And we hope that they will approve legislation that will provide that necessary exemption language to parents regarding vaccine requirements in schools.
So wait a minute. Let me make sure that I heard you correctly. You said Lobby turned in a red card as in opposition.
They did. They turned in a red card in opposition to the bill that would prohibit COVID-19 vaccine mandates, just COVID-19 vaccine mandates in the workplace. And what that piece of legislation stated was, they could require it. Businesses could require it if they want to, but they had to offer an exemption similar to schools offering exemptions to students. But it also included some language that would prohibit a vaccine mandate for a vaccine that was still under EUA, that had no long-term safety studies, that had never been tested for its carcinogenic or its mutagenic effect. And they still did a pass on it. And what do we have now in front of us? We have a product with no long-term safety studies. It's never been studied for its carcinogenic effect, its ability to cause cancer, its mutagenic effect. We have no idea. And all of this is being mandated on not only our workers, our employees in the state of Louisiana, but our students.
Well, part of the reason I pointed that out was for all our Republican, quote-unquote, conservative friends who think Lobby is just the cat's meow and the butter on the bread. I would also remind y'all that Lobby is the one who really got Common Core going in the state of Louisiana. For those of you that love Common Core and also claim to be Republican conservatives.
Look, Rex, I'm going to take a walk down memory lane. Me and Kara were one of the first members, of Lobby when they first started out, had been members from then on out. And then Lobby, I'm going to say Lobby sold out and turned their back on what was in the best interest of the taxpayers and citizens of Louisiana. They did. And that's Duke speaking. And I experienced it firsthand of them, literally stabbing someone in the back. Yeah, Lobby. Yeah, I still got that knife wound in my back. And I would also, with getting that off my chest, I'm going to ask, and I think I know probably 2 of the names of the 3 and 2 votes you got on the Health and Welfare Committee. One was Mike Eccles, and the other was probably Raymond Cruz.
It was both of those. Rep. Eccles did not vote for the employee mandate bill. But I think he was hesitant about his vote. But you have to understand, Rep. Eccles, not to defend his vote on that, but he does work in the healthcare industry. And I think if he had to vote on it again today, I think he would vote in a different direction. But Rep. Eccles did vote favorably for both of those pieces of legislation. Representative Julie Emerson voted for the employee mandate bill. Prohibition of an employee mandate bill, and I think it was Representative Wayne McMahon that did.
So our rep Raymond Cruz was not one of the 3 and 2 votes.
Oh no, he did. He voted for both of those pieces so that they would pass. Yeah, he's. I really like Representative Raymond Cruz. I think he's one of our friendlies, if you will, on House Health and Welfare. He's been very helpful in asking the right questions to the people that come before the committee, especially LDH. He and Representative Eccles are great at holding them and keeping them accountable. I just wish they had the authority to arrest people that can.
That's a slippery slope. We have to be careful with that. And I would like to point out this is now more than one show where we have had to give Raymond Cruz some kudos and give him some credit for stuff. We've been looking for Raymond for months to see what he's actually done, but apparently he's done some good things.
Yeah, apparently a little bit.
Yeah, he's done a lot of good things. I really like Representative Cruz.
Yeah, and Mike has been on the show in the past. In fact, after that first committee hearing, and I can't remember her first name, but Miss Brown, that talked about, these are not masks, these are muzzles. Yeah. Well, this is a funny thing. We had a show, and she came on the show at the same time. Well, the battery during the show went out in her fire alarm, and it was beeping through the whole show. And we had Representative Eccles in here as, from the representative position, and we had her and I think Angie Darnell as folks who testified in the audience, and given a perspective from both. Martina Brown, and that fire alarm, that was amazing.
That was it was something else.
I really like Martina Brown. I had a chance to meet her at the Capitol. And she stood in defense of a friend of mine. I don't know if you guys have ever had an opportunity to speak to Alana Newman, but Alana is the woman that was carried out by the sergeant at arms.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when Martina stood up and said, take off your mask. She was telling everybody in the room, take off your mask. And I had actually already exited the room. I was the reason that it was State Representative Dustin Miller. LDH had come to the table to testify. Secretary of State Health Officer Dr. Joseph Cantor was sitting right in front of me. I was on the front row, and I was not wearing a mask. And Dustin Miller looked at me, and he looked at Dr. Cantor, and that's when he asked the people in the audience to, if you weren't masked, he said, shouldn't they be, leaving the room to protect these state health workers who have no choice but to be here unmasked because they're testifying? And somebody behind me, it was so funny, somebody behind me said, but aren't they vaccinated? Doesn't their vaccine work? And so anyway, I went ahead and I exited the room. And so I missed all the commotion with Alana being carried out, but she came and sat behind me. She came and sat behind me right after she was carried out, because we were in a room right adjacent to everything that was going on. You just kind of walked out of the room and went right next door, and there was a live feed. So you could see what was happening. So we saw that there was this commotion, and then they cut the live feed. So we didn't really get to see everything that was going on. But Alana came and sat right behind me when it happened. And her neck was just completely red because they literally picked her up by her neck and her feet. They dropped her on the ground and then carried her out by her feet and her neck out the door. So when she came and sat behind me in the room right next door, I could tell, I honestly think she was in shock for a few minutes. She was just completely silent, still, and just, I guess, processing that whole event. And I just kept asking her, are you okay? Are you okay? Because literally her physical appearance, she was just red from having been picked up and carried out of the room. So yeah, I love Martina for her defense of Alana. She stood up as soon as they started to come towards Alana, and she said, take off your mask, do it, because you can't carry everybody out of the room. So
it's like the modern day sit-in type deal or whatever over the mask issue.
Right. Exactly. What?
Kimberly Powers she's a lot of comments. Yep. She says, I was walking in with my kids on one side of the room and they were dragging her out on the other side. We were oblivious.
Well, wait a minute. Even better, Kimberly just said they showed her drawers to the whole room.
They did.
Wow.
They dropped her she flipped and landed on her stomach, and she was wearing a skirt.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just awful what she went through, but she did it perfectly. From a civil disobedience perspective, I mean, she was textbook. She didn't move, she didn't fight. She was like, I'm going to be dead weight. If they're going to carry me out, they're going to have to do it manually.
Make them break a sweat a little bit at least.
Yes,
Wow.
but she did it so it was like textbook civil disobedience. But speaking of Kim Powers, Kim Powers started all of this.
Now we know the culprit.
Kim Powers was asked to leave the very first Bessie board meeting, the one where we submitted our request for evidence of safety on all of these issues back in July of 2020. Kim showed up. She knows her constitutional rights. I think it's Article 12, Section 3 says that an individual can attend public meetings. It doesn't give the state any kind of authority to place demands on an individual to attend a public meeting. So she came, armed with the state's constitution, but she was surrounded by state security officers and forced to come out of that room. So I think she's still in the middle of suing the Bessie board. I know the last update I heard on her lawsuit was that the judge had added, and this has been a while because this was again July of 2020, but the judge had added the governor as a defendant on that. He looked over and said it's not just the Bessie board at fault here, but it's the governor that's at fault.
Let me mention something real quick, Duke. We've actually got a comment coming in from our YouTube feed as well. So A.B. Wolf says, I was sitting in the middle section, totally uncalled for. So I just wanted to point out that we have some YouTubers watching.
Yep.
Now, we were talking about earlier that, we need some folks to run for office. Now, didn't Kim Powers recently run for something? Did I hear that correctly? And she was successful?
She did. She was successful. She is a new school board member for the Central City school system. So they have just, been handed a gift in Kim Powers. I just love her. She is one of those COVID silver linings that I talk about that I wouldn't have known her if it hadn't been for COVID.
Now, I've never spoke to Kim. I don't know a lot about her, but I follow politics across the state. And I do know that she ran, and I do know that she was successful. But what I would ask, and you know her, did she have intentions of running for office and becoming a politician? Was the things of late what motivated her to run?
I believe so. Hang on, I got to plug in my phone.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Hang on. Her father was in politics, so she is not, she's not unfamiliar with public service. But I don't know that she had intended to ever be a school board member, but she is now.
Well, that is the point I wanted to make to a lot of the folks watching tonight is you may not think or you may not have espoused to be a public servant, elected official, whatever you want to call it, or there's a lot of worse things that people would call elected politicians, but you may not have thought about it. But you know what? The thing is we need good people. We need good people that want to make a change, that will use common sense, as a part of how they would govern. That's at the end of the day what it's about. It's about common sense, and common sense is not being applied.
It's not at all. But the group of parents that I was talking about earlier that have become so well informed about the legislature and the statute, they are prepared. And that was my message. I was invited to come speak at a rally a couple of months ago down at the Capitol, and that was my message. If we're going to sit here and complain, we have to do something about it. If we're frustrated with the fact that our children are being masked without our consent, we have to do something about it. And the best way to do that is take the seats of those tyrants that have been using their authority to abuse their authority and mask our children, to send them home when they're healthy, to deny education, basically. And that was my message. Get ready to run for office. You have until 2022. I think that's the next round of school board elections. And just a FYI, there's a couple of classes that are coming up, one in the Shreveport area and one over in Monroe, on how to be an effective candidate for public office. Representative McCormick's legislative assistant, Jenny Smith, is bringing in some YAL, Young Americans for Liberty representatives to hold some candidate classes, and she's going to be getting trained so that she can hold some future classes. So February 12th, if I'm not mistaken, in Shreveport, and then the following weekend, the 19th, over in Ruston, and over in Monroe or West Monroe, I can't remember, but it's at the Liberty PAC website. I can send that to you guys later if you'd like to share some information on Canada classes.
Yeah, we'll be glad to. And you're bringing up a good point. The first thing is for folks to just get involved in something that they have a common belief with, and start going to some meetings, get a little educated, go to school board meetings, city council meetings, etc. Get a little more educated on the process and how things work and how meetings go, and show up.
Exactly. Yeah, be involved.
Kim Powers gave a great little bit of advice right there. She said, pray hard about it right now because you need to be thinking about qualifying in July. That's only a few months away, guys.
Right.
Not long.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Lowry. Shall we keep bantering for another hour or two?
We could go all night. We could go all night. I think we beat it to death. I mean, Jill, much respect. Thank you for fighting the fight, you and your cohorts. And when we say cohorts, you'll understand that's another one of those little snide behind the scenes remarks you wouldn't understand, but it is a badge of honor. And keep on fighting the good fight. And if there's any news that we can ever report out there, by all means, let us know. And you're welcome to come on the show anytime, Rex.
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and like I said earlier, and I think everybody in the comments agrees, you are very well versed in what you're talking about, very well educated, and you're able to project that where people can understand it and comprehend it logically, and that is a gift. Keep using it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Rex. I appreciate the hardball questions that you threw to me. I don't like to just kind of stand on a soapbox, but I love to counter some of those arguments so we can kind of, counter the mass formation psychosis that we're experiencing. Because I think those are some thoughts that people have that we need to kind of be able to logically argue against, especially the idea that our children are responsible for adults' health, anything along those lines. Our goal is to really protect individual rights and a parent's rights to determine what is best for their children. So I'm hoping that our organization is empowering people to do that.
All right. Well, like Duke said, anytime you need to get some information out, just reach out to us. We'll be glad to share it out. Share it out. And we'll look forward to having you on again in the future.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Good night.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye. Well, I think we covered pretty much all the topics.
We did. We didn't. I'm totally content. We wanted to get on that Caddo Commission thing, but we'll catch that next Thursday. I'm sure there'll be more entertainment coming out of them over there. But I got to tell you, Jill Hines is on top of her game. I mean, she's got her finger on the pulse of all of this. And, man, that is a resource. I mean, I would encourage everyone to, go to their webpage if you've got any questions. And I'm telling you, the Bossier Parish School Board, I am mad. I'm mad right now. They got the opportunity to, be the trendsetters for the state of Louisiana, and they cower out. With the exception of Dennis Bamberg and Adam Bass, cowered out.
Yeah, sounds like we need to have another couple of interviews coming up here pretty soon and get some perspective from their side of it. And I agree with you. Like I said earlier, I stand behind what they're trying to do 100%. I agree they're maybe a little late to the party, but better late than never. And so we'll figure out some ways to try to help them out as best as we can with our audience and things that folks can do. The average person sitting there, the average taxpayer, and mom and dad that has a kid in the Bossier Parish school system. We'll try to help you all out as much as we can on steps to take.
Real quick, Tory Heimel, recalls is an uphill climb. You need to find candidates to run against these people. That's
exactly
the ticket. It's not recalls. You waste too much money, time, and effort. I mean, it's not that it's impossible, but you're wasting time and effort. Do some of them need to be recalled? Yeah, they probably do. But strategically, it's not the smart move. You need to find a candidate, organize, and go all in to support them. You need to oppose these people who are opposing what's in the best interest of the citizens and the taxpayers.
Agreed 100%. Okay. Oh, yep. And you're right, Charles. Grandparents as well, so we don't want to forget the grandparents too. So, okay, Mr. Lowry, I have a good old Whataburger patty melt in there waiting on me. And
good night. Enjoy your Whataburger.
I am out of here. All right, folks, we appreciate all of y'all watching. We've been running 50, 60 people now for the last hour. That's amazing. Again, we appreciate y'all. Got email you want to send to us, lawatch@protonmail.com. I'll have the website up for Louisiana Watch before too long, and we'll have information there and all that kind of good stuff. We will see y'all Tuesday night on Bossier Watch, probably next Thursday night again on Louisiana Watch. Off we go.
Good night.
Good night.